The Ballot Treason is a game by GMT. It is part of their range of two-player card-driven games about political themes, but smaller and shorter than, say, games like Twilight Struggle. Here we are in Czechoslovakia in 1938, and the players are playing the role of basically 2 points of view, two main political stances. So one player will push for conceding to Hitler's territorial demands, in which case that will mean that Czechoslovakia will lose part of their country, and the other player is trying to push for defending against those demands, in which case the risk, of course, is provoking an invasion from Germany. So two-player game and also with a solitaire option and with rules on how to handle either side so that you in return can play either side. But I haven't tried the solo, I played it with a human friend only. So here's the board, and if you play games of this kind, some concepts already will be familiar, evident. You're gonna place influence cubes to represent the influence of the 2 points of view, concede plays as white, and defend plays as green. Various areas are connected by arrows indicating how they logically could influence each other, and say the press and the public influence each other. See that the arrow goes two ways, the press influences the opposition and vice versa, but sometimes the arrows go one way. Say the general staff of the military has a one-way arrow toward the president, so they count as adjacent to the president and putting pressure on the president. The other way around, not so much. The area is also divided into 4 domains, that's how they're called, representing international forces, political, military, and the public. Each domain includes 3 spaces, and the 3 spaces are not all equal because each domain has a pivotal space. You recognize this from the different shape, and that is particularly important. You control a space if you have the majority of cubes there. So for example, at the beginning of the game, concede controls the United Kingdom, and defend controls France and the Soviet Union. That can change. And you control a domain if you control all 3 areas, so that's a lot more difficult. So right now, for example, defend controls the military because, well, they control all areas, in one case because, in 2 cases because they are the only person there, in another case because they are the majority, 2 cubes versus 1. So as you can imagine, the game will be about adding, removing, and moving around these cubes a lot. You have a deck of objective cards. At the beginning of each round, each player receives 2 of them, and they choose 1 to keep, and they discard the other. Some objectives are simpler to achieve for some players rather than others. For example, controlling the general staff is a lot easier for defend, and controlling the United Kingdom is a lot easier for concede, for example. So you choose 1 or 2 objectives, and you keep it face down. It will be checked and scored at the end of the round, and then each player receives a hand of 5 cards, and the cards are associated with concede, as you can see from the green band, with defend. We defend with green, concede with white, or neutral with blue. So you will have your hand of, say, 5 cards. There you go. And the opponent also has a hand of 5 cards, so it wouldn't be fair. Also, each player has a card that starts face up next to them, and they can play during the game, or they can save it for the final confrontation. It's a particularly good card, both because it has a nice high value here, and because it has a powerful event. So during the game, you can play this card at any time instead of one of the cards from your hand, or you can save it until the end. What does it mean until the end? Because the game plays in 3 main rounds. Remember, I told you have a hand of 4 cards. Sorry, 5. You will play 4 of them, and then the remaining one you will place it here in the final decision section. You will play 3 rounds, so at the end of each round you will have 1 there, and then you will have a shorter 4th round called the final decision round, in which you will use 3 cards. And you will always have 3 cards there at the end. You may or may not still have your special card there, in which case you will simply decide which 3 you want to keep, for example, like that. So the final round you will only have 3 cards, and you will only do the smaller actions indicated here. If in your final decision round you have a card that doesn't have anything written at the bottom, it doesn't do anything. The final decision round only influences the military and the political, by the way. So you play a card, and when you play a card, you can use it for its operational points here. You can use it for the event if it's your own event, and then you discard it. Now, during your turn, if the opponent discarded a card with your event, or discard a neutral event that didn't trigger it, so basically from top of the discard pile there is an event that you could have triggered if it was your turn, you can trigger it. You simply discard a card from hand and you trigger the event. The event, as you can imagine, again, it will manipulate the situation on the board, and so you will add, move, remove cubes, implementing the event as literally as possible, as close as possible. That's for the events. Or using these points here. Now, when you use these points, you can spend an operation point to remove an enemy cube where you're present. And so, for example, right now in the State Defense Guard, where we have 2 for defend, 1 for concede, either player could spend operation point to remove 1 of the opponent, and that's the way it works. So, okay, I spend an operation point to remove you there. You can also spend an operation point to add your own cubes, and you can add cubes where you're present, so concede could place 1 there, or adjacent to where you control a space at the start of play. So that means that suppose that white has three operation points and decide to spend them adding cubes. They could add 2 there, they could even add all 3, but what they could not do is to add 2 there, gain control in the middle of their play, and then place it there adjacent, because that's not adjacent to where they have control. And so that's the idea. Suppose that they decide to place 2 there, but again, they cannot place it adjacent to that because they didn't control it. They could place that one, however, adjacent to the UK, which they controlled, and so they're going to place it on the president. This idea that you check what is controlled only at the beginning of your play is repeated many times in the rules. I assume maybe the playtesters struggle with it, but it's very important. There is no daisy chains like I'm taking control, then I'm going here, I'm taking control, then I can now place it there. And so again, taking away control from the opponent is very important. Removing the opponent from an area so that they cannot so easily sneak back in there, another huge element of the strategy. As the general idea, you have a couple of other elements, specific rules for each round representing the different events. Specific events, I should go here, specific events that will tell us what the Germans do. When the Germans start acting, then concede gets extra cubes because the German population freaks out a little, and you place discs there. The amount of discs there represents, again, the intensity of German activities, which will influence the mobilization, which may give cubes to the defend player. I'm not going to the details, you'll simply resolve this event as described, basically. After, after you played your cards and you set aside 1 for the final decision, The round is over. Now you gotta score the board. First, you look at the board and you look at the pivotal spaces and you see who controls them. The player who controls the pivotal space in each domain will get a bonus action. They can place a friendly cube, they can remove an enemy cube, they can also move their cubes around, which is something you cannot do usually. And so, for example, here they decide to add one cube there because Concede controls that one. And they also control that one, so decide to place one adjacent there. They control the domain space, and so they decide to move the cubes, around. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe they remove this one. Boom. And so here, the one controls the pivotal space, so nothing happens. After you take those pivotal bonus actions, now you finally score. If you control every space in a domain, you score a point, so you control the whole domain. Right now, no one is controlling anything because I place cubes randomly. In this other example, however, in this other example now, the Concede controls the political and Defend controls the military. When you, and that's pretty much the important thing. Now for victory conditions, when you score a point, we also reveal our objectives, and those also will give us, may give us victory points plus other advantages. When you score a point, you pull this marker 1 in your direction. Of course, this is for defend, and that one is for concede. And 0 is not neutral. 0 it belongs to the concede side. If you play one way, how can the game end? If at the beginning of a round 2 or 3, the the victory marker is on the defense side under one of those red dice symbol, that means that the Germans are preparing to defend at a level that is getting the Germans, the Czechoslovakians are defending at a level that makes the Germans want to invade, and so you roll a die. If you roll equal to or less than the amount of victory points, so in this situation, say at the beginning of round 3, the defense side rolls a die, and if they roll 3 or less, the Germans win, the Germans invade, and defend wins. So one way for defending to win, to save the honor of the country, is to invite a German invasion, basically. And in this case, the war starts in 1938. So again, the defend side wins by inviting a German aggression. Or simply, if they, at the end of round 3, they have at least 1 point, and they have and they have at least as many cubes as concede in the presidential space or in a space that puts pressure on the president. Those are the two conditions for the defend player to win. Any other result is a concede victory. As I said, 3 main rounds plus a quick final decision round in which you only look at those tabs, only using the 3 cards that you saved, and only influencing the political, only the political and the military get scored. The Battle of Treason is a game about an unusual topic, or at least I know that I hadn't played any game about this topic before, and I'm always happy to explore history through games, especially when it comes to low complexity, shorter games of this kind. That is the type of game that I favor these days. And so I got to explore this topic, learn more about it, and the game is also fun. So that's important, that's significant. It has all of the advantage of games of this family, if you play those, say like Fort Sumter, for example, of being manageable, and of having that sense that you're always close to achieving something good, but you're also very close to losing a lot, because adding a cube, removing a cube, you're always like moving toward the margin of greatness or failure, which makes every play pretty much exciting and interesting. I like the degree of control that you have up to a certain point, with the fact that you can save a card for the end. So there really is a card that I don't want to ever get played. With an awesome event for you, I don't want it to be in the discard pile because you may trigger it. Then I put it there, which maybe is not so great as a final card, but it's still okay because then I can still replace it with that card that I have at the beginning. So you have an element of mitigation of luck there. There's still gonna be luck, but again, overall, everybody will be hit by luck to some degree, and strategy matters ultimately. And I like the fact that in some parts of some of these games of this type, yeah, you may get to like put a cube and you remove a cube, or remove a cube and you add a cube. Meaning sometimes you feel like you're just erasing progress, which is not super exciting. There's a minimal element here, but there's a sense of building up to an engine, with the fact that you need to have control in order to place things adjacent, and then really being able, you're working just to lock out the opponent from certain areas, so it's a lot harder for them to be able to take control of those again, at least using standard operation points. They need to hope for certain events. So there's an element of like, yes, there's a sense of uncertainty, which is exciting, but also a sense of reward and satisfaction when you're able to take control of a certain area and build a buffer around it. Which again is not going to be 100% because there's still ways for the other player to sneak in through those arrows, and especially through events. But it really manages to create a nice element there in, I wouldn't call it engine building, but definitely you get a sense that taking control of certain areas and locking the other player out is more than the sum of the parts, which is satisfying. The events are fun to implement, and again, it's nice and cool to learn about all of those historical events as you play cards. And the objectives, I like that. They add that extra oomph toward the end of a round. You definitely want to get them if you can. You have a little bit of choice there because you get two, and you get a sense of like, okay, I think my opponent really wants that thing, which maybe I can fight for it, and maybe I can take advantage of the fact that I know where they want to go somewhere else. It's a nice little touch. I would say, yeah, the standard engine, play cards, add, remove cubes, is well known, but all the other elements of Chrome, of thematic representation that you have around there with the mobilization and things like that, they work well. They're well implemented and well. They work well thematically, and they work well mechanically, game-wise, which is pretty great. So again, the Battle of Treason, to me, a two-player game, because when it comes to games of this kind, I'm not a big fan of, when I play games solo, I prefer to play two-handed. I'm not a big fan of going through the steps of the automated opponent, but if you like that style, then you have the option to play the game solo this way. To me, I think I'll play it two players, because it's simple enough that I can teach it even to players who have never played it before. It's not too long, so it's very easy to introduce new people to. The Battle of Treason, a strong implementation of the idea of smaller card-driven political games.